In a fictional time and place, there's a prospering city, but not all is as it seems. A corrupt government, strict laws, and the unwavering conformity of the populace has brought a once free-thinking society to the brink of mindless dependency. But there's always a black sheep amongst the herd, and those black sheep are called runners. Hey everyone, and I'm Brittani with the Leaderboard, and we're talking about Mirror's Edge today. A first-person action-adventure game mixed with a bit of platforming that shocked the gaming community with its stylized art direction and expertly executed free-running movement. Never before had the creators of the ever-popular Battlefield attempted such a unique take on a cherished genre. Are you a diehard fan? Just wondering if it's worth your time? We've got something for everyone as we run, jump, and grapple our way through 107 facts you should know about Mirror's Edge. Let's get started. Fact 1. Mirror's Edge was developed by EA DICE and released in November 2008 for the PlayStation 3 and Xbox 360. A few months later, in January 2009, the game made its way over to the PC. Fact 2. The game was officially announced at the Game Developers Conference in February 2008, at which EA showed the first clips of gameplay which generally impressed the media and the public. Fact 3. By November of 2008, DICE had already announced that Mirror's Edge had gone gold, meaning the game was ready for shipment. By November 11th, the game was shipped to retailers worldwide. Fact 4. Long before the game's announcement, DICE openly spoke about a need to diversify their portfolio. Creative director of DICE Sweden, Ben Cousins, said, "One of the things that DICE needs to do is diversify away from Battlefield because, although Battlefield is tremendously successful and will continue to be so, I think the studio needs something fresh and interesting. Everyone needs a little break from time to time. I get it." Fact 5. DICE planned to make another first-person title because they felt that that was their strong suit, but they felt that the person needed to be taken out of the first-person shooter genre. This led them to the idea behind Mirror's Edge, a game that would be in first-person format but wouldn't focus so much on the weapons as it did the person. To accomplish this, they worked solely on the movement at first, which is something senior producer Owen McBrien says is often shelved for later during the development of first-person shooters. Fact 6. The game started out as a prototype from some DICE employees to see what they could do with movement in first-person shooters. Everything worked out so well that they had so much fun playing around in the prototype that they decided to make the game just out of that. Fact 7. The designers like to say that the game had free running as opposed to parkour because it fit better with the game's theme and gameplay. Fact 8. EA, the world's largest game publisher, owns DICE. EA has had a reputation in the past for not allowing their subsidiaries to really have control of the games they were making, but that changed significantly when EA CEO introduced his city-state model, allowing for the game developers to have more freedom when creating games. Many people within DICE said that Mirror's Edge never would have happened without the city-state mentality because it allowed studios the freedom to try new things. Fact 9. CEO Riccatello gave DICE the perfect opportunity to create something as different as Mirror's Edge. Due to the success of the game DICE had developed, Riccatello told them, "If it works for you, do what you think is right." With these words, the new city-state model, DICE could let the creative juices flow freely. Fact 10. Sean Decker, studio general manager of DICE, said that having their offices in Sweden helped quite a bit with getting the game approved too, as very rarely people are coming by to check on their progress or what they're working on. Fact 11. Though he backed the project, Riccatello was scared of the idea of a game in first person that didn't focus on shooting. He said that he was pushing DICE to change it to third person. He wanted to see Faith, the main character, more often, but as sort of a compromise, the DICE developers added a lot more mirrors. According to Riccatello, before that meeting, there hadn't been any. Fact 12. DICE were so positive about their perspective choice that they flat out refused to even prototype a third-person version. Fact 13. I bet he's glad the developers were so stubborn. After seeing the finished product, Riccatello admitted, "I was really wrong about the third-person thing." Fact 14. In an interview with videogamer.com, Decker said some of the biggest pushback during the game's creation came from fans that associated DICE so closely with Battlefield that they didn't believe that they could make an action-adventure game, comparing their situation to Blizzard when World of Warcraft was revealed. Fact 15. Early ideas for Mirror's Edge were already being workshopped as early as 2005. It all began with the idea the team thought was asinine, and a handful of sketches that got turned into an animation which made them realize that this crazy idea was actually doable. Fact 16. The art style of the game was developed after the concept of the gameplay was fleshed out. In fact, the art style and many other aspects of the game were completely driven by gameplay. Fact 17. The designers were intended to create the visuals to look nothing like anything else that was made at the time. Owen O'Brien, senior producer of the game, said that he wanted a game where I could look at a screenshot and say, "Hey, that's Mirror's Edge." Fact 18. The creator said that they wanted the player to feel every impact. You feel when you've been shot, you get the vertigo and the dizziness. They wanted the game to feel the difference between watching an action movie and being the star of one. You know, just without the years of stunt training and no real risk involved whatsoever. Fact 19. This idea often led to people feeling what is known as simulation sickness. Think motion sickness, but without actually moving. One of the head producers at DICE actually suffers from this ailment, so the team had to be extra careful when developing the game. There were a few ways they tried to combat the simulation sickness, including a small rectangle in the center of the screen that is meant to help prevent people from taking a trip to Vomtown by giving them something motionless as a focal point. Fact 20, as opposed to many other first-person games, Mirror's Edge has a wide field of view to help combat simulation sickness and improve upon the feeling of free running. Other first-person games intentionally give narrow fields of view to give the player a claustrophobic feeling, which increase tension and intensity. Fact 21, yet another technique used to alleviate simulation sickness, DICE made the camera follow the character's eyes instead of their entire head, which is much more common in first-person games. This also removed the robotic feeling of head movements, O'Brien says. Fact 22, the camera was also made to bob as you move and even more as you sprint, giving the player the feeling that they are sprinting as well. Don't worry, it's not all nauseating, DICE made sure of that. Fact 23, to get an idea of how the viewpoint should look during movement, the art team did tests by attaching cameras to people's head and filming them as they ran on a treadmill, including O'Brien, whom recalled running and being told to go faster and faster by the lead animator. Fact 24, designers decided not to put a heads-up display, or HUD, on the screen to make sure that it wouldn't interfere with the player's immersion into the character. This, along with the ambient sounds of the character's breathing and the world around her, really helps take in the perspective. Fact 25, the game's visual designers put a heavy emphasis on using the primary colors along with some orange. If you look closely at the color palette of the game, you'll notice that everything meant to be green is actually white, like the plants and etc. Fact 26, early in production, the design team took out all the colors except for red, which was used primarily to guide the player to their objectives. This became what is referred to as runner vision. The idea is that someone who spends their days running around the city would see the world differently than someone who doesn't. They aren't going to look at the plants, they're going to spot pieces of the environment that they can utilize to get around faster. Fact 27, the DICE outsourced a lot of the art for this game. So much, in fact, that the game became the biggest outsourcing project at EA. One of the biggest outsourcing needs was for the cinematic cutscenes in the game, as DICE had little to no experience with them at the time. Fact 28, having Mirror's Edge take place in an open world had crossed the developers' minds, but they felt that they would have had to water down the action had they gone that route. Instead, they stuck with a linear level base system in order to really pack in the elements they wanted to highlight. Fact 29, that being said, the team also wanted the game to have high replayability, so they incorporated multiple paths to take in each level. This along with rewards for finding the quickest way through each level. Fact 30, another issue with the open world idea, according to Owen O'Brien, is that you lose one of the most important aspects of Mirror's Edge, the story. He wanted to make sure that the storytelling took priority and feared that the player would lose track of that by having random side quests scattered across the city. Fact 31, the city, though fictional, is modeled after a number of real cities around the world, notably Dubai and Singapore. It is meant to be a contemporary city, but not a futuristic one as it might appear. Fact 32, the city itself is deliberately not named. O'Brien explains that the city is an amalgam of many cities, and what is happening within it is a combination of many things seen around the world today. He also said that when he starts naming cities, they always sound like it belongs in a sci-fi setting, and he really didn't want that. Fact 33, O'Brien was inspired by the Mel Gibson film Payback, specifically how the film never names the city it takes place in. Sound familiar? This is not the only movie that the game drew inspiration from either, but we'll touch upon that later. Fact 34, much like real life, faith movements are momentum based, so she doesn't simply start off at full speed and have the ability to leap from one skyscraper to another. She needs to get a head start. Without that, she may take a bit of a fall. Fact 35, faith was developed to relate to both male and female players. Producer Tom Ferrer said that the team wanted to break away from the other video game looks where all the men were muscle freaks and that all the women were well endowed. They wanted to create a character that would be minimalistic yet edgy with an obvious sense of rebelliousness that came from the form of her tattoos and the splash of color in her gloves and shoes. Fact 36, when designing Faith, the team wanted her to be attractive but not sexualized. They felt that this would make her more believable. It was also important for her to look like she fit into her role as a runner, thus her athletic physique, which Game Informer applauded, stating it showed a level of practicality rarely seen in the games industry. Fact 37, according to producers, Faith's personality was influenced by movie heroines like Ellen Ripley from Aliens and John McClane of Die Hard, in a sense that they are put into tough situations and prove their worth through acts of heroics. Fact 38, Faith was originally going to start the game with a base weapon, but the producers worried that if she had a weapon from the beginning, people would only see the game as a shooter instead of an action-adventure game that it is. Fact 39, although the team leaned towards melee-oriented combat as opposed to firearms, you can choose to disarm your opponent and use their guns. The only catch is that you will not find ammo anywhere, so you only have the bullets that remain in the clip. Fact 40, however, the team wanted to be sure that guns were really only tools for the player to use when there's no other option, so they included some bonuses for being a pacifist, including an achievement called Test of Faith for players who get through the entire game without shooting anyone. Fact 41, at one point the creators talked about removing weapons entirely, but said that they liked the idea of making a game where it felt good to throw a gun away. Fact 42, Tom Tom Fair told 1UP during an interview after the game's release that he felt that they maybe put too much emphasis on not using guns, which he admits makes for a more difficult and at times frustrating experience. According to Fair, a lot of players were jumping into the game going for the Test of Faith achievement, which was intended for Mirror's Edge veterans. Fact 43, the Mirror's Edge design team made sure to avoid using explosive weaponry like rocket launchers because they felt like it didn't align with the aesthetic they were creating in the game. It just didn't feel right to have such an agile character lugging around a cumbersome weapon. Fact 44, a design feature that was nearly cut from the game was the ability to see Faith's hands and feet, but the designers couldn't figure out how to make the game work without them. It was another one of those instances where it just didn't feel right. Fact 45, early designs for the game had vehicles for the player to use, but they didn't have the feel that the designers were looking for, so they were scrapped. Fact 46, the game's story was written by Rihanna Pratchett, who is Terry Pratchett's daughter. While her father is known for the Discworld series, Rihanna has worked on a number of video games including the recent Tomb Raider, Heavenly Sword, and BioShock Infinite. Fact 47, while players of the game can make parallels to the world that we live in, that was not Rihanna's goal with the story. The world she created was a mix of an Orwellian anti-utopia and a nanny state. Fact 48, Pratchett said that one of the hardest parts of telling the game's story was attempting to keep up with the fast-paced nature of the game. To make sure everything matched the pacing of the game, a significant amount of dialogue was cut from the final product. Fact 49, Faith's level dialogue was cut from the game towards the end of production as the team felt that the talking tended to break the immersion of taking control of a first-person character. Plus, have you ever tried talking while sprinting and leaping off rooftops? There's a lot of panting. It's not easy. Fact 50, even though she thought the game was great, Pratchett said it suffered because the narrative wasn't thought through earlier in the project, so the structure didn't lend itself to an interactive storytelling. Fact 51, as you now know, the game got inspiration from a lot of places. Owen O'Brien is a big Joss Whedon fan and drew a lot of inspiration from the story's themes from Whedon's cult hit Firefly. Whedon once said that the basis of Firefly is that you can't force other people to live by your system, even if your system is better. O'Brien must have heard that and ran with it because it's the whole premise behind Mirror's Edge. Fact 52, in an interview, Sean Decker said that Jason Bourne movies in the opening scene from Casino Royale acted as sort of inspiration for certain game mechanics such as fighting. He said when describing the game to people using those examples, they got hyped but knew a challenge would come from meeting such expectations in the first-person point of view. Fact 53, two games that were influential for the team while developing Mirror's Edge were Breakdown and the Prince of Persia series. Sometimes I wish Faith had the sands of time. Oops, I just jumped off the wrong part of the building, no prob. Fact 54, most of the game's soundtrack was composed by the Swedish artist Solar Field, whose real name is Magnus Birgersson. Fact 55, the game's theme, Still Alive, however, is by Lisa Mikovsky. Before you ask, no, there's no psychopathic robot singing about science and cake, but it's still a catchy tune, and if you can't get enough of it, there's an entire album of Still Alive remixes. Fact 56, Faith Connors is voiced by actress Jules de Jong, who has played Emily in Thomas and Friends since 2009 and continues to do so today. Fact 57, Glenn Rage, awesome name, who voices Mercury in Mirror's Edge, is also a voice in Thomas and Friends, playing Cranky. Clearly acting in something as intense as Mirror's Edge leaves you desperate to find something innocent to lend your voice to. Fact 58, actress Emily Beecham plays Celeste in the game. One of Beecham's major film roles was Karen in 28 Weeks Later. She also continues to work today, playing Deidre in Hail Caesar and the Widow in Into the Badlands. Fact 59, DICE worked with Illuminate Labs to develop a lighting system from the games that fit with the rest of the design. The lighting system was named Beast. Fact 60, Beast is used to simulate color bounce, soft shadows, high dynamic range, HDR lighting, and lighting of moving objects in real-time game environments. Basically, it bounces not only light but color as well, which was key in making the game stand out. Fact 61, Mirror's Edge uses Unreal Engine 3 instead of the in-house engine that DICE uses for the Battlefield series, Frostbite. At the time, Frostbite was in its early stages and the team wanted something a bit more developed. Fact 62, instead of using 3D cinematic cutscenes, the team decided to go with a stylized cartoonish 2D option to break up the action. Fact 63, a Whedon reference may be when the character Ropeburn tells his employer that Project Icarus will be fine, specifically saying it'll be 5 by 5, the catchphrase of the character Faith from Buffy the Vampire Slayer. Fact 64, the name of the controlling power is appropriately named the City Regime, which started its rise to power decades before the start of the game. Those who work for the regime are known as Blues. Fact 65, not everyone was willing to give up their liberty, however. Those who protested giving away their rights and freedom were pushed to the edges of the city, away from the general population. Fact 66, the game's title came from the fact that the city resembles a mirror and that the protesting citizens, including Faith, live on the edge of the city. It's how the runners in the game view their place in the world, on the mirror's edge. Fact 67, those people on the edge of the city won't use technology as it was closely monitored by the looming governing body, so they use runners to hand deliver messages, data, packages, and anything else they don't want to be seen. Fact 68, runners utilize parkour to evade capture during their deliveries by taking advantage of their surroundings. As stated, the protagonist, Faith, is a runner, though you won't be spending the entire game playing FedEx Extreme. Fact 69, there are a number of runner groups in the city. Each sect can be identified by their tattoos and the color of their clothes. They're pretty much super fit gangs when you think about it. Fact 70, Faith is 24 years old and has a less tattooed twin sister named Kate who plays a major role throughout Mirror's Edge. Fact 71, Faith and Kate's mother was killed during an event known as the November Riots, which took place 18 years before the start of Mirror's Edge. This life-altering loss caused by the city regime set Faith and Kate down a path of resistance. Faith, the runner, works from outside the confines of the government, while Kate works from within it as a blue. Fact 72, remember when I said you wouldn't be delivering packages for the whole game? Well, here's why. Kate is framed for the murder of Robert Pope, a free-thinking November rioter that was in the process of running for mayor, and just like that, we're playing Clue, the parkour edition. Fact 73, spoiler alert! While on the hunt for evidence, Faith discovers a new government program called Project Icarus, which trains blues how to parkour in order to help take out rebellious runners. Fact 74, Faith's radio support and boss throughout the game is Mercury, aka Merc, who trains and recruits new runners, being a former runner himself. Fact 75, according to the screen accessed by Faith and Prandello Kruger, Mercury's last known residence was on Wilshire Boulevard, Los Angeles. Fact 76, if you pay close enough attention to that same screen, it also spoils who a mysterious runner is that Faith chases throughout the climax of the game. While the other runners shown have some information given, all of Celeste's information is labeled as classified, which is only a little suspicious. Fact 77, perhaps the most iconic part of Faith's design are her tattoos. The most iconic, of course, is the one around her right eye, which becomes a symbol for the game. Fact 78, throughout the city, there are signs written in both English along with a mix of Chinese and Japanese, which helps mystify the city's location. Fact 79, to contribute to the confusion of the precise location of the city, at the New Eden Mall there's a billboard that contains writing in English and Russian. Fact 80, there are quite a few Easter eggs hidden in the game. In a chapter called Kate, if you follow the correct sequence of events, you're able to unleash a rat the size of a car on the city. However, the rat doesn't do much, it just runs down a road and disappears. Fact 81, there are a few hidden messages in the game that reference the giant rat. If you find the right answering machines in Prandello Kruger, you can hear voicemails left by a pest control agency about a rat problem. And if you listen for some dialogue from the blues, they speak about how the rats are getting bigger and bigger. Fact 82, there's also graffiti and notes from someone named the janitor. He often misspelled words and seems to have some strange relationship with the rats in the city. It was never explained in the game and still remains a mystery. Fact 83, also in Prandello Kruger, there's an email from someone named Mark to one of his coworkers about his accepting of a different job and his plan to quit. He says in the email that it's not like they can tie me to a chair and beat me for quitting my job. Later in the level, if you look through the correct window, you can find a chair knocked to the ground with blood splattered on the floor, and from another window, a man tied to a chair. So I guess Mark wasn't so lucky. Fact 84, there's a lot of graffiti throughout the game, perhaps most notably in the Shard, where there's a wall that says "Where's November" painted on it. If the player focuses on this, Faith goes into a monologue saying, "I was too young to remember exactly how it started. The authorities said the changes were there for the greater good, but good isn't the same as right." Fact 85, in the chapter The Shard, you can find the name Bobby B signed into a stack of boxes on the back of an open truck. This is a reference to Robert Briscoe, one of the level artists in the game. Fact 86, The Shard is the final chapter of the game, which takes place in the city's most impressive skyscraper, named The Shard, which, according to the game, was constructed in 2012. Interestingly enough, London's largest tower began in construction in 2009, was completed in 2012, and opened its doors in 2013. Its name? The Shard. Coincidence? Or is London the beginning of Dice's prophecy? Fact 87, the fastest speedrun of the game was done in under 30 minutes by the Philotrax on the PC version. Surprisingly, the fastest 100% run of the game was only 15 minutes longer than that by Void Team. Fact 88, Dice and DC Comics teamed up to create a line of Mirror's Edge comic books which were written by Rihanna Pratchett. The comics delve into Faith's backstory, giving readers more of a sense of who she was. Fact 89, Rihanna Pratchett was working on the comics for over a year. She said that she always thought the game would make a great comic because the visuals were so good. Fact 90, originally Faith was not going to be the lead character of the story. Instead, she was going to be a non-playable character that the player met. The original protagonist was going to be a male. Fact 91, a promotional video from Mirror's Edge was released featuring Sebastian Falcon, founder of Freerunning, as he runs through the rooftops of Stockholm, mirrored with Faith running some time trial maps. This promotion led to the announcement that players could race against Falcon in the demo of the game in the time trial section. Fact 92, the fictional company in Mirror's Edge, Prandello Kruger, had a promotional website at one point. If you saved the picture on the website and opened it as a text file, you would get secret messages. Fact 93, once again in Battlefield 3 on the map Operation Metro, you can find a runner's bag and a sign pointing the way to Ave de Faith Connors. Coincidence? I think not. Fact 94, in Battlefield 4 there's a reference to Mirror's Edge. In the campaign mission, Shanghai, there is a TV screen that shows an ad asking if the viewer likes the color red, likes to run, and is followed by the name of Faith with a picture of a shoe. Fact 95, the character design has drawn considerable praise from a number of sides, as, unlike many females in video games, she is smart and strong, and while she is attractive, she is not over-sexualized. Fact 96, Games Radar ranked Faith's tats second on their list of sickest tattoos in gaming. Fact 97, overall, the character of Faith was well received. Complex Magazine ranked her as their 4th most badass video game character of all time. Fact 98, that's not all either. If you start looking for lists of the best female video game characters, you'll find that Faith Connors is somewhere on that list. CNET, GameZone, The Guardian, and even Red Bull named her as one of their favorites. You know, Red Bull should probably sponsor Faith. They could totally create some awesome viral marketing campaigns. Fact 99, fans and critics received the game well, most often pointing out the game's unique visuals and flow of movement. IGN called it a thrilling and stylish adventure. Fact 100, while IGN did praise the game, it gave a solid 8.5 out of 10 rating. They also noted that the game definitely felt like it was trying to figure itself out at times, specifically in the plot and combat departments. Fact 101, the animated cutscenes were also a source of debate amongst fans and critics alike. While some said it took away from the action with its weak presentation and dialogue, others said it was a stylistic choice that blended well with the game's art design. Fact 102, reviews were mostly positive. Metacritic gave the console versions a 79 out of 100 and the PC version an 81 out of 100. Fact 103, at Gamescom 2008, Mirror's Edge was named Best Xbox 360 Game. Fact 104, GamePro and Game Trailers both named Mirror's Edge the best of E3 2008. Fact 105, Mirror's Edge also won Game Critic Award for Best Original Game at E3 2008. Needless to say, people were pretty stoked about the new IP. Fact 106, the Academy of Interactive Arts and Sciences nominated Mirror's Edge for Outstanding Achievement in Art Direction and awarded it the Adventure Game of the Year. Fact 107, DICE did release a game for phones allowing fans to play as Faith again, but in third-person side-scroller. The game featured 14 levels and was based around Faith as she tries to stop a deadly threat that has grown from inside the runner's group. The app was removed from the App Store on iPhones as it was not compatible with updated operating systems.